Hey there, guys. Yes, here we are again. So I plan to do as far as I'm concerned, slightly overdue Shakti energy work update today. I also feel like I should pull a card, or maybe I will just use the cards that I've got here, my cards for the day. The Hanged Man and the Ace of Swords. Because they're really good. They apply to my Shakti experiences as they have turned out to turn out. I still got to get my brain into gear a bit. I also picked out my Rose Oracle cards again that I made. They actually smell really nice because I stuck a couple of little vials of essential oils into the box with them. They've been inside this box for probably 5 weeks or so, and I haven't had them out at all, which I found really unsettling. I've thought of them a few times, and I had kind of forgotten where I'd put them. I'd stuck them into about a box that I've got of another oracle card set that I was expanding on, and so the oracle went out of the box and the box was empty, so I could stick these guys in. So this is my homemade personal searching kind of a collection of images rather than an actual deck. I did actually pull a card of this set as well, and it turns out to be this one, Dangerous Guardian, it says, and that is actually Lamo, the Tibetan really scary mother goddess. There's going to be noises because, they're replacing the roof over on the houses over there, and my washing machine is turning, and we will just have to make do with it as it is. So I'm going to keep this out here, also alongside the Ace of Swords and the Hanged Man in the Marielle, and just try to make sense of this whole topic here, because basically what happened and what I am going to keep referring to here is that this is going to go in my playlist as well of the Shakti energy work. As you may remember, I have done a particular style of, I suppose, Kundalini meditation starting January this year, and onwards from there I have worked with that a few times a week at least, all the time. Okay, so at some point, and I have made videos about this as well, so I'm not going to recapitulate everything the whole time. At some point, I think that's in June or somewhere around that time, I found that I needed to allow the Shakti energy, so this Kundalini energy that I could feel really well in my belly and in my throat area and along the back, along the front of my spine, really, along there. I needed to incorporate that, or to let it come into my solar plexus and heart chakra areas. So really inside the centers, nerve centers, or however you're supposed to describe those. This is something that is happening close to the physical level, actually. That's what I think, anyway. I'm gonna pause here, get me a cup of water because I'm already thirsty. So, be back shortly. Okay, so that should be better. The thing is that it turns out that our identities and a lot of what we identify with, what we consider to be normal for ourselves, whatever that means, habits, thought patterns, preferences, the lot of it. It turns out, at least this is my experience. All of this is my experience, okay? So if ever there's somebody going into this and they're going about it and they come to their own conclusions and they're different, that's going to be valid for them, okay? So this is just my story, as always. All our patterns, I think, are really kind of, I would say, the result of the way the energy, the basic, potentially, I shouldn't say neutral, but the original natural energy of our incarnation, okay, the person that you are in the basis, the way that passes through our chakras, I think. So all of them, all 7 of them in the body. I'm talking chakras in the body at the moment only. And so the way we think, the way our preferences and priorities, the way we react to people, the way we look for contact with people or don't, how ambitious we are. A lot of that, how we behave, how our lives are structured, the patterns that repeat themselves on and so forth, A lot of that people are trying to get a hold of by doing astrology, for example, which is a great approach. There's lots there that can be looked at. But then you get this question, as with tarot, I think, do you consider this to be a given, and is there nothing you can do about this? Supposedly I have all these squares in my chart. What am I supposed to go and do with that? Am I supposed to just lie down and take it, That's always the problem with all this, right? Whereas with Shakti energy, it turns out that you can actually change yourself. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. And I may have to take my glasses off because, it's messing with me for a short moment. Because I have encountered in the past couple of weeks, especially during my holidays, a significant number of changes in myself. Things that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't ready for this in any way. Although, of course, I was and I am. I mean, I'm here, aren't I? So it should be okay. It should be fine, really. But I have had quite a bit of a hard time dealing with this. Because introducing this Shakti energy, which is the energy that should have been mine all along, okay? Into the solar plexus area and the diaphragm area and the heart area means that what I was hoping for was was going to make me stronger, that it was going to make me feel stronger and less of a pushover and less, less messed up, less worried about what people would think, and so on and so forth. And that didn't work out at all. I'm still more or less as confused about other people as I used to be. But maybe that change also will come later at some point or other. Now that I've sort of managed to reorganize my life as I like it, I've found also, and this may also be an interesting point for some people, that if there is an area in your life or a type of activity that you're engaged in that really doesn't sit well with you anymore, it used to maybe, but not anymore because of changes, because of developments, because of new people or what have you, and then there's a huge difference in quitting. The whole energy changes afterwards because I have chosen to be on my own team, to, like I said, to let go of that part of that activity, the social restaurant, the kitchen, the cooking, also the good things, I have chosen, in order to protect myself from certain patterns happening again and again that I found very hard to deal with, I just knew I had to, come to some type of a choice. As if I didn't do that, I was going to walk this way again and again. I was going to drive me nuts at the end. Sooner or later, I would have to go anyway, because we just don't fit anymore. Now, what I'm trying to say here is, as soon as you have made the decision and implemented it, and it's basically done. I have one more session to go with those people, and then I am kind of done. Also, because it doesn't mean that I will never see those people again. I won't see them very often, I'm quite sure of that. But it will be, if I see them, it will be outside of that context, outside of that obligation of getting the job done, getting the meal ready by 6 o'clock in the evening. Everything has to be perfect and ready and hot, and plates hot and everything. And everybody, I'm realizing now, has worked all this time within this framework of this sense of obligation, of getting the stuff ready, getting it all done, and always by the time the meal has been served, the 3-course meal that we used to do, by the time we're sort of halfway through the main course of the menu of the day, everybody relaxes because, wow, it's done. We've got the number of portions. We've got the number of whatever it is right. Everything's right. The level of the shopping was okay. Everything, that's how this used to go. So I'm realizing now that this sense of obligation, this push to get things right at the right time, etc., it really is part of the job, and it's really quite natural. And everybody else works within that sense of obligation as well as I always have. And that's not the problem. I've never had a problem doing that or sort of cooperating with other people in that. It isn't that at all. It's other things and other mindsets and other opinions of things that have sort of finally pushed me, and the realization that there isn't really anything new happening there for me anymore. So I have been basically doing the same activities for the past 2 or 3 years or so now, and I have seen enough really with this. So, but what I'm trying to get at, I'm being elaborate here, is that we compromise in an area of our lives, even if it means once every 2 weeks for 5 hours at a stretch only and nowhere else really, because that's what my life more or less looks like. The energy of the complete picture of my life is changing because I have taken out those 5 hours twice a month. I am done with that process. I'm done with that part, that compromise. And somehow I feel ridiculously more free, more myself, basically. I am acknowledging, I guess, who I really am much more than before. As long as there is this much compromise, that's what I'm saying here. The effect of this much compromise on all the rest of it is significant. So I thought that was worth mentioning. And the why as to I cannot do this level of compromise anymore, whereas I used to, that I think has everything to do with incorporating the Shakti energy into, and it was quite a bit of work. I've gone into this in previous videos. I'll stick a link in the description as usual to sort of, if you want to know what it is that I'm saying here. It basically has to do with sitting in a state of a quite significant focus to the exclusion of everything else, accompanying this Shakti or Kundalini energy is basically the same thing, to where you want it to go. And I'm going to pause once more because I'd forgotten to turn off the sound of the phone again. So now it's on silent, cannot be disturbed anymore. So maybe there's only five more minutes of this. I don't know. I want to describe how that feels, because what I basically remember was that the chakras themselves look a bit like funnels of some type, or flowers. You can imagine them as having this type of a shape, like so, around the center, okay? And if you imagine the beginning of this, imagine a lily. Oh, that's a good example, I think, shape-wise. It doesn't really have to have 5 or 6 points like so. That's not really what I mean. It's the funnel type shape that I'm basically interested in. And the middle and beginning of that funnel, you should see as emerging from the spinal cord, I think, or close in with the vertebrae, the spinal column, okay? In with that. And then it comes out from there and it goes forward and it opens out. However, there's always an however with me. If you get your Kundalini energy to go in there, okay, going outward, as I have stated a couple of times in the earliest of my Shakti energy work videos, Shakti energy left by itself, left to its own devices, will always do this. It diverges, it spreads out. That's just the way it goes. It's a natural flow of it, of the way it, you know, progresses through you. So what tends to happen is that if there is a darker area in the middle where we are closest in with ourselves, where we are really on top of ourselves, or where we find ourselves, both in the solar plexus chakra and in the heart chakra in different ways. And I would say in the heart chakra over here, you know, there's 5 or 6 of these lily type shapes, okay, where each time in the middle there's an area that may or may not be dark. And I think in many of us, in almost all of us, this area will really be dark, because everything that is left over from the past, everything that hasn't been resolved ever, you know, tends to just hang around in there. And of these, say we have 5, just let's assume that there's 5 in here, and I'm sort of including the throat chakra, but not even necessarily. I'm just, you know, going up to here, okay? Just this whole rib cage, what's that called? The sternum, up to this little depression in here, okay? Just that area. In the middle of that, where my fingers are, if you can see that, that's quite a sore spot. And I would say that is where this most central, most heartfelt of the set of them opens out. And in the middle of that is where I sort of invited the Shakti energy to come in again. So I am not talking about along my vertebrae and along my spinal column now. I am talking outward, towards the front, towards, you know, if this is my spinal column, I am talking here now, if this is my skin, okay? So all along there, and I would say every bit of depression, let me just identify it as such, that is found in this level of expression outward, so towards the outside, it does have a manifestation inside the funnel. And at the bottom or at the root of the funnel, there will still be some type of a lack of energy, and that is all that there is to it. So far, so good, okay? Introducing the Shakti in there was millimeter, micron work, really focusing, really getting it all going and keeping it going. But I think I did that in a relatively short time. That wasn't so hard. However, after that, I have found that I am defining myself really differently. And this is where it gets interesting, of course, and this is why I am here, basically, because these types of things, I don't think... I have found one video that I still am supposed to watch about working with Kundalini energy, and most times nobody really goes into this much detail of what it looks like, how you change, what it does. And maybe over in India, where people have got millennia of experience with this type of thing, all this is really normal and really obvious, and it wouldn't even, they don't consider it worthy to talk about. That's possible. But I think it's useful, and it's certainly useful for me, because this is what I want to do. This is what I want to bring out there. So, the Hanged Man card, definitely, it turns out that everything that I used to identify with back in the day, and that is up to this Shakti session, in June or whenever it really was, I find that I used to identify with a ton of things that basically were illusions. I basically identified with things my mother used to consider important, or even my father, genetically, or as a small child, I must have imbibed some of his priorities and his... I keep saying priorities and preferences, well, because that's basically it, really. Tendencies towards thinking of yourself as an outcast in many ways, identifying with a certain, basically with an absence and a lack in all sorts of ways. I'm going to pause again for the washing machine to stop whirling, because that's just breaking my concentration right there. Yes, and now I can continue talking without having to listen to the whining of the machine. The funny thing is for me that I have always identified with a certain level of being an outcast, being a traveler, being a gypsy, an artist, and etc., without actually connecting ever to any communities, without emotionally connecting anywhere, really. So that was a really fundamental part. That is what has changed. And I believe also that you may have seen that there's quite a number of past lives videos by now. I made a playlist also of the past lives videos and vlogs that I made that may be of interest to somebody out there. The past lives dimension, which in my case happens to include like a gypsy or a traveler past, a history, a definite personal emotional history of belonging to that group of people, that's actually part of me. And that has come to the light as a consequence of my Shakti work also. So what keeps coming back, there's a fly flying around my head, what keeps coming back is like this massive shift in boundaries, and where some things used to be true, only it was in a very watered down state of affairs, and it was nostalgic, and I was basically not involved. That was really crucial, whereas now I am. And so I have, it doesn't mean that everything in there is untrue necessarily, only the way that it doesn't belong together anymore. And so whenever now, like in my holiday, I have visited places that I used to live at, that I used to really enjoy going back to see. And I had this illusion with me of an identification with this part of that country, because I was really still connected to my past very much. and to my identifications that came from my parents, basically. Period. So, and that is gone, and that is weird. So, I get a lot of truth for which I am intensely grateful. I am so grateful that I made it. I also kind of realized that everything that I used to believe in that is sort of fading away or crumbling now, or has completely faded or is even completely disappeared to the extent that I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. All that used to carry me. So it has kind of brought me to this position, and then I am free. I am supposed to, from here, I am supposed to make it up myself and work with whatever is really real for me. And that I find particularly hard. What with trauma, yes, and survivor stuff, and parents divorced, and Auschwitz, and all the rest of it, it tends to be, it feels a bit like a millstone stuck around my head, like that. Like, it's heavy, and it is, what I keep getting is that there are ways and means, and there's things that I can do. Basically, there is, the tarot is always fine. My rose oracle is fine. YouTube is fine. There's moments even on Facebook where I'm interacting with somebody and we're responding really well to each other, and I go like, okay, so that worked because it was real. However, my past basically is of no use to me anymore, other than to realize that some things were really hard to deal with. And sometimes there's just moments where I am confronted once more for the 15th time this year, with a realization for how things were for my dad, for example, growing up with that law and Auschwitz in his near past, and never having a chance to unburden ever. And I just, it makes me almost nauseous to realize the level of pain that those people were in, because that just keeps coming into me. I am a character, my personality is such that I am so sensitive to all these emotions of people. So I am also really grateful for the past lives experiences and that dimension that has completely sort of revealed itself to me, which I wasn't expecting at all. I was only looking for strength. I was looking for more honesty. That's working, I think. I also, in terms of honesty, what I find is that I have a really hard time putting up with people's BS nowadays, and that makes me hard to live with also, and all that, there's changes. I'm changing. I am really changing. I'm becoming more sensitive, so I don't feel any stronger, really. I do feel a lot happier, but it's also completely different, and it's also completely natural to who I'm supposed to be. So I'm recording all this as to how confusing it can really get to really work with Kundalini energy. Okay? Because I don't think anybody does that. So I think that is pretty cool to be able to do that. Maybe it is because I am sort of prepared for this, that I was prepared to do this by these past lives and by all the history that I share with my family and all that. People I can't talk to, I look for people, and I'm hoping kind of that in the next 5 years or so, I will actually find more people to sort of share things with, in ways that are also slightly less difficult and slightly less traumatizing. And I'm looking at my cards here. I pulled out a few more cards for the kind of to describe, I suppose, the appearance of my past lives in this whole Shakti process, something I wasn't expecting at all, because things just happened. It was really, there's a lot of synchronicity in there. I get the 10 of Wands, this one, and I get the 6 of Wands, which I find quite mysterious. I like these cards a lot. I don't really know I wouldn't really know what they mean, other than the 10 of Wands makes sense as kind of an optimization is a word, I think, of the self through karmic realizations, through becoming aware of that whole dimension of time that really belongs with us. So I suppose that what I should be doing potentially is write this book that I don't want to write, okay, about how I see the self, really. And maybe it'll happen. Maybe that's something that I should do, really. That the self in the world, in a body, is a lot less limited than we used to think. And I get to determine, maybe that's what the 6 of Wands is about, I get to determine, to really determine finally who I am, not because of priorities and prerogatives is the word I was looking for, that I'm assuming that I'm entitled to, which is how it really used to work. Because there's that also. There's this sense of having been a parasite on the world. I didn't know that was coming. I have sort of written about this in my journal on my holidays a bit, where I realized that I wasn't ever really, I didn't used to really engage with people. I didn't really used to be a part of things, because you don't get to be a part of things in 2 weeks' time, or even in 2 years' time. If you only stay there for 2 years and then you move on, because that's what my mother used to do. So, self-determination as finding out who you really are, that's quite an interesting challenge, I think. And I'm assuming that there's still quite a lot more for me to discover. So, on that note, I will leave you for now. And I had another card, which is the 2 of Cups again, that I had earlier this week also. And I'm just randomly basically picking out cards that feel good to me and seeing what that does. And seeing also where it leads me, and it leads me to understand the tarot a bit better again. And that's really nice, because I find the tarot to be extremely supportive in this whole endless tale of searching. And as to this dangerous guardian, of course, I have on purpose never really limited the meanings of these cards. They're supposed to be whatever you want them to be, or whatever they can be for you at that moment. So that's big. There's so much more. So okay, I will leave us with that, and I will watch this back and upload it. Thank you for watching. There goes the washing machine again. My washing machine is working. Bless its little buttons. Thank you. Bye bye.